The last explosion faded into the darkness of space. Where once there had been a proud fleet of 3,000 warships, now there was only wreckage. Twisted metal drifted in the void. Escape pods blinked their distress signals into the emptiness. Bodies floated among the debris, frozen in the cold of space. Admiral Sorvex stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, the Thalani vessel Rising Tide. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His blue-green skin had turned pale. Through the cracked viewport, he watched the remains of everything he had spent his life building drift past like leaves in an autumn wind. The Battle of Kethris Prime was over. The Galactic Concordance had lost. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "I am receiving casualty reports from the surviving vessels." Sorvex did not turn around. He already knew what the numbers would show. He had watched ship after ship disappear from his tactical display. He had heard the screams cut short as vessels broke apart. He had given orders that sent thousands to their deaths, and it had not been enough. "Tell me," he said, "of our 3,200 vessels, approximately 270 remain combat capable. Another 130 are badly damaged but can make it to port. The rest are—" The officer paused. "The rest are gone, Admiral." 90%. They had lost 90% of the combined fleet of the Galactic Concordance. 17 species had contributed their finest ships and their bravest warriors to this battle. 17 species had believed that together they could stop the Vreth Dominion. They had been wrong. Sorvex finally turned from the viewport. His bridge crew looked at him with fear in their eyes. They wanted him to say something that would make sense of this disaster. They wanted hope. He had none to give. "Set course for Solurus Station," he ordered. "All surviving vessels are to regroup there. We will—" He stopped. What would they do? Fight again? With what? "We will await further orders from the Council." The Rising Tide limped away from the battlefield. Behind them, the Vreth Dominion did not pursue. They did not need to. They had broken the back of the Concordance military in a single afternoon. Now they would take their time, savoring their victory, preparing for the final push into the core worlds. Sorvex retreated to his private quarters and sealed the door. Only then did he allow himself to feel the full weight of despair. He sank into his chair and covered his face with his hands. He had served in the Concordance fleet for 40 years. He had risen through the ranks through skill and dedication. He had believed in the alliance between species, believed that cooperation made them stronger than any single empire could ever be. The Vreth had proven him wrong. They had appeared from the galactic rim 5 years ago. A crystalline species, their bodies made of living mineral that could reshape itself at will. Their ships were grown rather than built, massive organic crystals that moved through space like predators hunting prey. Their weapons fired concentrated beams of energy that cut through shields like they were not there. At first, the Concordance had tried diplomacy. The Vreth had responded by destroying the diplomatic vessel and eating the ambassadors. Their crystalline bodies could absorb organic matter and convert it to energy. To them, other species were not potential allies or even enemies. They were food. War had followed. The Concordance had won early victories through superior numbers. But the Vreth learned quickly. They adapted. Each battle taught them more about their enemies' tactics and technology. By the 3rd year of the war, they had begun to win. By the 4th year, they were unstoppable. And now this, the final defeat. A chime sounded at his door. Sorvex composed himself and called for entry. His first officer, a slender Kethrani named Voss, stepped inside. Her feathered crest lay flat against her skull, a sign of deep distress in her species. "Admiral, the Council has called an emergency session. They are requesting your presence via holographic link." "Of course they are," Sorvex said bitterly. "They want someone to blame." "Sir, I do not think that is their purpose." The message spoke of desperate measures and ancient protocols. Sorvex looked up sharply. Ancient protocols. He knew what that meant. The Council was going to discuss options that had been considered unthinkable only days ago. He rose and followed Voss to the communications room. The holographic projectors hummed to life, and suddenly Sorvex stood in the great chamber of the Concordance Council. Representatives from all 17 member species filled the circular room, though many of their seats now held only the flickering images of those who had survived. High Counselor Marin of the Selvari presided over the session. She was ancient by any species standards, her gray skin wrinkled with age, her eyes still sharp despite the weight of years. "Admiral Sorvex," she said, "we grieve with you for the losses at Kethris Prime, but we do not have time for mourning. The Vreth advance continues. Our analysts believe they will reach the core worlds within 3 weeks." 3 weeks. The core worlds held the capitals of most concordant species, billions of lives, thousands of years of civilization and culture. All of it would be consumed by the crystalline hunger of the Vreth. "What would the Council have me do?" Sorvex asked. "I have barely 300 ships remaining. The Vreth command fleet numbers over 2,000. "We know," Marin said. "That is why we have invoked the Protocol of Final Resort." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Sorvex felt his heart begin to beat faster. The Protocol of Final Resort allowed the Council to take actions that would normally be forbidden. It meant they were truly desperate. "We have reviewed our options," Marin continued. "We have no secret weapons. We have no hidden fleets. We have no allies beyond the Concordants who might come to our aid." She paused. "But there is one member species we have not yet asked for help." Sorvex frowned. "All member species contributed to the combined fleet. Everyone has given what they could." "Not everyone," said another voice. Ambassador Kreth of the Morvani spoke up, his stone-like face unreadable. "The humans sent only a token force, 50 vessels. They claimed it was all they could spare." The humans. Sorvex barely thought about them. They were a young species who had joined the Concordance only 40 years ago. They kept to themselves in a quiet region of space, trading occasionally but mostly staying out of galactic affairs. Their technology was considered unremarkable. Their military was assumed to be negligible. "You cannot be serious," said Representative Thal of the Zerani. "The humans, they are primitives. Their ships are barely capable of interstellar travel. What could they possibly offer?" "Perhaps nothing," Marin admitted, "but they are the only member species the Vreth have not yet encountered. The Vreth may not know they exist, and desperate times require desperate measures." "We would be asking children to fight our war for us," Thal said with disgust. "We would be asking fellow members of the Concordance to honor their treaty obligations," Marin replied sharply, "just as we have honored ours. The Protocol of Final Resort allows us to call upon any member species for maximum contribution to collective defense. The humans signed that treaty. They are bound by it." Sorvex listened to the debate with growing frustration. This was their plan? To beg help from a species that probably could not even defend itself against a Vreth scout patrol? But what choice did they have? "Send the message," he said finally, cutting through the argument. "Send it to the humans. Tell them what has happened. Tell them what we face. Ask them for whatever help they can provide." He looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of 17 species facing extinction. "We have nothing left to lose by asking." The Council voted. The message was sent, a desperate plea from a dying civilization to their youngest and weakest member, begging for help that no one believed would come. Sorvex returned to his quarters and sat in the darkness. He did not expect the humans to save them. He did not expect anyone to save them. He had seen the Vreth in battle. He had watched their crystal ships tear through the finest vessels the Concordance could build. But he would fight anyway. He would gather his remaining ships at Siluris Station. He would prepare a final defense. And when the Vreth came, he would make them pay for every inch of space they took. It was all he had left. A final stand. A warrior's death. He did not know that across the galaxy, in a region of space the Concordance considered unimportant, something was stirring. He did not know that the message he had just sent would change the course of galactic history. He did not know that the humans had been waiting. Admiral Chen Wei stood at the window of her office on Luna Station, looking down at the blue marble of Earth. Behind her, the message from the Galactic Concordance played for the third time. The voice of High Counselor Marin filled the room, tired and desperate, asking humanity for whatever help they could offer. Chen was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair. She had commanded Earth's United Colonial Command for 15 years. She had overseen the greatest military buildup in human history, and she had done it all in complete secrecy. The message ended. Chen turned to face the other people in the room. They were the most powerful military leaders humanity had ever produced, and not one of them was known to the Galactic Concordance. "Well," she said, "it seems our neighbors finally need us." General Marcus Stone, commander of ground forces, crossed his thick arms over his chest. "They spent 40 years treating us like children. Now they want our help?" "They're dying, Marcus," said Admiral Yuki Tanaka, who oversaw fleet operations. "The reports from Kethris Prime are devastating. The Vreth destroyed 90% of their combined forces in a single battle. And they'll destroy the rest within the month," Chen said, "unless we intervene." The room fell silent. Everyone present knew what intervention would mean. It would mean revealing secrets that humanity had kept for 4 decades. It would mean showing the galaxy what they really were. Chen walked to her desk and activated the holographic display. A map of human space appeared, showing the 12 colony worlds that officially belonged to humanity. Then she pressed another button, and the map expanded. Hidden shipyards appeared in the asteroid belts. Secret bases showed up on moons that the Concordance believed were uninhabited. Fleet positions materialized in regions of space that humanity had claimed were too dangerous to settle. The true extent of human power filled the room with light. "The Shadow Armada," Chen said, 4,200 vessels, carriers, battleships, destroyers, cruisers, all built in secret. All equipped with technology we have never shown to anyone. "We've been preparing for something like this since we joined the Concordance," said Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the head of military research. "We studied every species' technology. We learned from their successes and their failures, and then we built something better." General Stone nodded slowly. "Our weapons can punch through Vreth crystalline armor. We tested them on samples we obtained years ago. They didn't even know we were collecting them. Our electronic warfare systems can blind their sensors," Admiral Tanaka added. "Our drone swarms can overwhelm their formations. Our ships are faster, our shields are stronger, and our crews have been training for exactly this kind of war." Chen looked at each of them in turn. "The question is not whether we can help. The question is whether we should." "What do you mean?" Stone asked. "They're asking for our help. We have the power to give it." "And what happens after?" Chen replied. "If we reveal ourselves, we can never go back to being the quiet little species in the corner. The galaxy will know what we are. Some will thank us. Others will fear us. We will have enemies we never had before." Dr. Okonkwo spoke up. "We always knew this day would come. We built the Shadow Armada precisely because we knew that someday something would threaten the galaxy that the Concordance couldn't handle. The Vreth are that threat." "There's another consideration," Admiral Tanaka said quietly. "If we don't help, billions will die. 17 species will be wiped out or enslaved. The Concordance will fall." She paused. "And eventually, the Vreth will find us anyway. Better to fight them now, with allies, than to fight them later, alone." Chen turned back to the window. Earth hung in the darkness, beautiful and fragile. Humanity's homeworld, the cradle of their civilization. Everything they were had started on that small blue planet. 40 years ago, when humanity had first made contact with the Concordance, they had been overwhelmed. The galaxy was vast and full of ancient, powerful species. Humanity had felt small and vulnerable. They had joined the Concordance for protection, hoping to grow strong enough to stand on their own someday. But instead of relying on others, they had quietly built their own strength. They had watched and learned. They had developed technologies in secret that surpassed anything the Concordance had ever seen. They had trained soldiers and sailors who could match any warrior in the galaxy. They had done all this because they remembered their own history. They remembered what it was like to be conquered, to be enslaved, to be wiped out by enemies who saw them as inferior. They had sworn that would never happen again. Now the moment of truth had arrived. "Send the response," Chen said finally. She turned to face her commanders. "Tell the Concordance that help is coming. Tell them to hold their position at Solurus Station and wait for us." "What exactly should we tell them?" Tanaka asked. Chen smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had been pretending to be a sheep. "Tell them simply, we are coming." The orders went out within the hour. Across human space, in hidden shipyards and secret bases, the Shadow Armada came to life. 4,000 ships powered up their engines and prepared to move. Crews who had trained in secret for decades finally received the orders they had been waiting for. On Earth, the civilian population knew nothing. The government made no announcements. There was no panic, no fear, no celebration. The ships simply gathered in the darkness beyond the outer colonies, forming into fleets, preparing for war. Admiral Chen boarded her flagship, the carrier Eternal Vigilance. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, 2 kilometers long, carrying 500 fighter craft and weapons that could crack a moon in half. The Concordance had never seen it. The Concordance had never suspected it existed. Chen took her place on the bridge and looked out at the assembled fleet. The ship stretched as far as she could see, their running lights blinking in the darkness like stars come to life. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "all fleet elements report ready for deployment." "And the Concordance?" "They have received our message. They seem confused. They are asking for clarification on what help we can provide." Chen could imagine their reaction. The quiet little humans, the species everyone overlooked, promising to help against an enemy that had just destroyed the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. They probably thought it was a joke. "They'll understand soon enough," she said. "Set course for Soluris Station, maximum speed." The Shadow Armada moved. 4,000 ships entered hyperspace in perfect formation, leaving no trace of their passage. They were ghosts, shadows, the hidden strength of a species that had learned long ago that the best defense was to never let your enemies know how strong you really were. As the stars stretched into lines and the fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had hoped to remain hidden for another century at least. They had wanted more time to grow, to develop, to prepare. The Vreth had forced their hand, but perhaps it was for the best. Humanity could not hide forever. Someday they would have to take their place in the galaxy. Someday they would have to show what they really were. That day had come. The humans were going to war. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Sorvex received humanity's response. He read the 3 words on his screen and felt nothing but despair. "We are coming." What could that possibly mean? 50 ships? 100? It would not matter. The Vreth would crush whatever the humans sent. He did not know that his entire understanding of humanity was about to be shattered. He did not know that the quiet, primitive species he had dismissed as unimportant was about to save the galaxy. He would learn soon enough. Soluris Station hung in the darkness of space like a wounded animal waiting to die. The massive orbital platform, once the pride of Concordance engineering, now showed the scars of hasty repairs and constant use. 270 warships clustered around it, the last remnants of a fleet that had once numbered in the thousands. Admiral Sorvex stood in the station's command center, watching the long-range sensors. Somewhere out there, the Vreth were coming. His scouts reported their fleet moving slowly but steadily toward the core worlds. Over 2,000 crystal ships, each one a nightmare of organic technology and savage hunger. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out, "the Vreth Vanguard has entered the system. They will be in weapons range within 6 hours." 6 hours. Sorvex had hoped for more time, but he had known this moment would come. He had prepared as best he could. His ships were positioned in a defensive formation around the station. They would fight. They would die. But they would make the Vreth pay for every kilometer they advanced. "Any word from the humans?" he asked, though he did not expect good news. "Their message said they were coming," his communications officer replied. "Nothing more. Our scouts in human space report nothing. No fleet movements. No mobilization. If they are sending help, we cannot detect it." Sorvex nodded grimly. He had expected as much. The humans were either lying or their idea of help was so small as to be meaningless. Either way, he could not count on them. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for battle. This is our final stand. Let it be worthy of those who came before us." The hours crawled by. Sorvex watched the Vreth fleet approach on his sensors, a wall of red dots advancing like a tide of blood. He recorded messages for his family, knowing they would probably never receive them. He said goodbye to his homeworld in his heart, certain he would never see it again. 4 hours until contact, 3 hours too. Admiral! His sensor officer's voice cracked with shock. Multiple hyperspace signatures. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Sorvex spun toward the display. Blue dots were appearing all around the system, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. They kept coming, wave after wave, until the display could barely contain them all. Identify those ships, he demanded. Sir, they are... The officer paused, checking her instruments twice. They are human ships. Admiral, I am reading over 4,000 vessels. The command center went silent. Every officer, every technician, every person in the room stopped what they were doing and stared at the display. 4,000 ships. The humans had sent 4,000 ships. A communication request came through. Sorvex accepted it with numb fingers. A human face appeared on the screen. A small woman with gray-streaked black hair and eyes that held no fear. She wore a uniform Sorvex had never seen before, covered in decorations he did not recognize. Admiral Sorvex, she said, I am Admiral Chen Wei of the United Colonial Command. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Sorvex found his voice. Admiral Chen, we were told humans had only 50 combat vessels. We did not expect... I understand, Chen said, and something like a smile crossed her face. We have been quiet about our capabilities. We preferred it that way. But circumstances have changed. Her expression hardened. The Vreth will not take another system, not while we stand. Before Sorvex could respond, the Vreth fleet opened communications. The face of Overseer Crick appeared on a split screen, his crystalline features shifting as he spoke. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, his body a lattice of purple and black crystal that pulsed with inner light. Concordance vessels, Crick said, his voice like breaking glass. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender your stations and your worlds, and we will make your end quick. Fight us, and we will consume you slowly, savoring every scream. Then his attention shifted to the human fleet. For a moment, something like curiosity crossed his alien features. What is this? New prey. I do not recognize your vessels, little creatures. What species are you? Admiral Chen answered calmly. We are human. We are members of the Galactic Concordance, and we are offering you one chance to withdraw. Crix laughed. The sound was horrible, like crystal shattering against crystal. Withdraw? You are 4,000. We are 2,000. You think numbers alone will save you? We have crushed larger fleets than this. Your technology is primitive. Your species is young. You will feed us well. I am giving you fair warning, Chen said. Turn back now, and your species will survive. Continue this attack, and you will learn why humanity does not make threats we cannot keep. Crick stopped laughing. His crystalline face twisted into something that might have been anger. Arrogant little creature, I will enjoy consuming you personally. All ships, attack. The Vreth fleet surged forward. 2,000 crystal ships accelerating toward the combined human and concordance forces. They had won every battle they had ever fought. They had no reason to believe this one would be different. Admiral Sorvex, Chen said, keep your ships in reserve. Protect the station. We will handle this. Before Sorvex could protest, the human fleet moved. 4,000 ships advanced in perfect coordination, spreading into a formation that no concordance admiral had ever seen. They moved like a single organism, each vessel knowing exactly where it needed to be. The Vreth fired first. Their crystalline beams lanced out across space, the same weapons that had torn through concordance shields like paper. The beams struck human shields and scattered harmlessly. The human ships did not even slow down. Sorvex stared in disbelief. That is impossible. No shield can withstand Vreth weapons. Ours can, Chen replied simply. Then the humans fired back. Weapons Sorvex had never seen lit up the darkness. Concentrated plasma bursts tore through Vreth crystalline armor like it was glass. Missiles that moved faster than anything in the Concordance arsenal found their targets with perfect accuracy. Drone swarms erupted from human carriers, thousands of small craft that swarmed Vreth ships and tore them apart piece by piece. In the first minute of combat, the humans destroyed 200 Vreth vessels. In the second minute, they destroyed 200 more. The Vreth formation shattered. Ships that had never known fear began to flee. Overseer Crix screamed orders over the communications channel, demanding that his forces stand and fight. But the humans were everywhere, cutting off escape routes, herding the Vreth into killing zones, systematically dismantling the greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled. 11 minutes after the battle began, it was over. Over 1,500 Vreth ships had been destroyed. The rest were scattered, fleeing into hyperspace. Overseer Crix's flagship drifted powerless, its weapons dead, its engines silent. Human boarding craft surrounded it, preparing to capture the vessel intact. Admiral Sorvex found that he had forgotten to breathe. He gasped for air, his forearms trembling, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. "How?" he managed to say. "How is this possible?" Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen again. She looked tired but satisfied. "We had 40 years to prepare, Admiral. 40 years to watch, to learn, to build. We hoped we would never need what we created, but we were ready. You hid all of this? From the entire concordance?" "We are a young species," Chen said. "The galaxy is old and dangerous. We learned from our own history that power attracts enemies and weakness invites conquest. So we appeared weak while we grew strong." She paused. "We are not weak anymore." Sorvex looked at the debris field that had been the Vreth Vanguard fleet. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen such a one-sided victory. The humans had done in 11 minutes what the entire concordance could not do in 5 years of war. "Overseer Crix has been captured," Chen reported. "We will interrogate him and learn everything we can about the Vreth Dominion." Her expression grew serious. This was just their forward fleet. Their empire spans hundreds of systems. They will send more. "Then we will fight them again," Sorvex said. He straightened his back and felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. "Together." Chen nodded. "Together." "The Council is calling an emergency session. We have much to discuss, Admiral. The war is not over, but today we proved it can be won." The communication ended. Sorvex stood alone in his command center, surrounded by officers who shared his shock and his wonder. They had come here to die. Instead, they had witnessed a miracle. The humans had come, and everything had changed. The shuttle docked with the human flagship, and Admiral Sorvex stepped into a world he did not recognize. The interior of the Eternal Vigilance was nothing like the simple, functional human vessels he had seen before. Everything was sleek and advanced, filled with technology that made even the finest concordance ships look primitive. A human officer met him at the airlock. She was young, with dark skin and sharp eyes, wearing the same unfamiliar uniform as Admiral Chen. "Admiral Sorvex," she said, "I am Commander Okafor. Admiral Chen is waiting for you. Please follow me." Sorvex followed her through corridors that hummed with quiet power. Crew members moved past them with purpose, nodding respectfully but never stopping their work. Everything was efficient. Everything was disciplined. This was not the casual, almost lazy atmosphere of the human ships the Concordance had known. "The vessels you showed us before," Sorvex said, "the 50 ships you sent to join the combined fleet, they were not real?" Commander Okafor smiled slightly. "They were real, but they were our oldest models, crewed by volunteers who knew they were playing a role. We needed the Concordance to believe we were weak. Why? Because the galaxy is full of species who would have seen us as a threat, species who would have demanded we share our technology, or who would have tried to conquer us before we could grow strong. We needed time. Hiding gave us that time." They reached a large door that slid open silently. Beyond it was a conference room with a view of space. The debris of the Vreth fleet was still visible in the distance, a reminder of what had happened hours before. Admiral Chen stood at the window. She turned as Sorvex entered and gestured for him to sit. "Thank you for coming, Admiral. I know you have questions." "Many questions," Sorvex admitted. He settled into a chair that adjusted automatically to his forearm body. Even their furniture was more advanced than anything he had ever used. "But one question matters more than the others. What happens now?" Chen sat across from him. "Now we win this war. But to do that, you need to understand what we are facing." She activated a holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared, with a vast region marked in red. The Vreth Dominion controls 472 star systems. Their population numbers in the trillions. The fleet we just destroyed was their expeditionary force, sent to conquer the Concordance and secure this region of space. She zoomed in on the red area. Their core worlds are here, protected by fleets that dwarf what we face today. Sorvex felt his hope begin to fade. Then our victory means nothing. It means everything, Chen said, because they do not know what hit them. Their communications suggest that Overseer Crix had no time to send a detailed report before we disabled his ship. As far as the Vreth High Command knows, their expeditionary force simply went silent. They will send scouts to investigate. Yes, and we will be ready for them. Chen leaned forward. Admiral, the Concordance Council is meeting right now to discuss the future of this war. They will ask humanity to take command of the combined military forces. I need to know that you will support that request. Sorvex was silent for a long moment. The idea of a young species commanding the ancient fleets of the Concordance would have been laughable a day ago. Now, after what he had seen, it seemed like the only sensible choice. You saved us, he said finally. You appeared when we had lost all hope and performed a miracle. I will support whatever the Council decides. He paused. But I want to understand. Why did you hide for so long? Why did you let us believe you were weak? Chen's expression grew thoughtful. How much do you know about human history, Admiral? Very little. Your species is young. You have not been part of galactic civilization for long. We are young compared to most concordant species, Chen agreed, but our history on Earth goes back thousands of years, and much of that history is violent. She brought up images on the display, cities burning, armies clashing, weapons that could destroy entire nations. Humans have fought each other since before we had written language. We have invented countless ways to kill each other. We have experienced conquest, slavery, genocide. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. She paused. And we learned that the strong often prey on the weak, that showing power invites challenge, that the safest course is often to appear harmless while preparing for the worst. Sorvex studied the images. He had known humans were considered primitive, but he had assumed that meant they were peaceful. These images told a different story. When we joined the Concordance, Chen continued, we saw how the galaxy worked. Ancient species with ancient grievances, empires rising and falling, wars fought over resources, territory, ideology. We saw that the galaxy was not so different from Earth, and we decided to be careful. You pretended to be harmless. We pretended to be unimportant. We settled quiet systems. We avoided conflict. We traded and cooperated and made ourselves useful but not threatening. Chen smiled. And all the while, we were building, learning, preparing. For the Vreth? For anything. We did not know what threat would eventually force us to reveal ourselves. We only knew that someday, something would. The Vreth simply happened to be that something. A chime sounded. Commander Okafor's voice came through the speaker. Admiral Chen, we have completed the interrogation of Overseer Crix. You will want to see this. Chen stood. Come with me, Admiral. You should hear this too. They walked to a secure section of the ship. Armed guards stood at every intersection, their weapons more advanced than anything Sorvex had ever seen. They passed through multiple security checkpoints before reaching a holding area. Overseer Crix was contained in a force field that crackled with energy. The crystalline being was still massive, still terrifying, but his arrogance was gone. His body pulsed with agitated light as he watched them enter. The prisoner has been cooperative, said the interrogation officer, a thin man with cold eyes. Largely because we convinced him that his only chance of survival is to help us. What have you learned? Chen asked. The Vreth Dominion is preparing a full mobilization. When word of this defeat reaches their homeworld, they will send everything they have. We are looking at a fleet of approximately 15,000 vessels, plus ground forces for occupation. Sorvex felt sick. 15,000. Even with the human shadow armada, how could they hope to defeat such numbers? Chen showed no fear. Timeline? 6 months to full mobilization. 3 months after that for the fleet to reach concordant space. We have 9 months to prepare. That is enough, Chen said. She turned to Overseer Crix. You heard your people's plans. Do you believe they can defeat us? Crix's crystal body pulsed with something that might have been hatred or fear. You destroyed my fleet in minutes. You have weapons we have never seen. Technology we do not understand. His voice crackled like breaking ice. But the Dominion has conquered 1,000 species. We have never lost a war. We will not lose this one. Chen stepped closer to the force field. Then let me tell you what is going to happen. We are going to use these 9 months to build more ships, train more soldiers, and prepare defenses that will turn every system between here and your homeworld into a death trap. When your great fleet arrives, we will destroy it. And then we will come for you. You cannot threaten the Dominion, Crix said. We are eternal. We are infinite. We will consume you all. No, Chen said quietly. You will not. Because humanity does not lose wars either. We just had not fought one yet. She turned away. Keep him alive. He may still be useful. As they walked back to the conference room, Sorvek struggled to process everything he had heard. 9 months to prepare for the greatest military assault the galaxy had ever seen. It seemed impossible. And yet, looking at Admiral Chen, he found himself believing it could be done. You spoke of building more ships, he said. How many? Chen smiled. As many as we need, Admiral. The Shadow Armada was just the beginning. We have shipyards that can produce a vessel every 3 days. We have resources stockpiled across dozens of systems, and now that we do not need to hide, we can mobilize fully. The Concordance will contribute as well, Sorvek said. We have industrial capacity, raw materials, experienced crews. We are not as strong as we were, but we can still fight. Good, because this war will require everything we have. Chen stopped at a window overlooking space. The stars burned cold and bright. The Vreth think they are coming to conquer us. They are wrong. They are coming to learn a lesson that humanity learned long ago. What lesson? Chen turned to face him. That the most dangerous enemy is not the one who appears strong. It is the one who appears weak but chooses to fight anyway. The Vreth have never faced a species like us. They have never known what it means to be truly desperate. To have everything on the line, to refuse to surrender no matter the odds. She looked back at the stars. They are going to learn. 6 months of preparation became 6 months of transformation. The galaxy had never seen anything like the war machine that humanity unleashed. Shipyards that had operated in secret now worked in the open, producing vessels at a rate that stunned the Concordance. Human engineers shared technology with allied species, upgrading their ships, improving their weapons, teaching them tactics that had been developed over decades of secret planning. Admiral Sorvex found himself working alongside Admiral Chen as part of a unified command structure. He learned to respect the humans, then to admire them, and finally to understand why they had hidden for so long. Their capacity for war was terrifying. Their creativity and destruction seemed limitless, but it was not mindless violence. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was calculated to win with the minimum necessary force. 3 months after the first battle, Vreth scout ships began appearing at the edges of Concordance space. They were destroyed before they could report back. The human electronic warfare systems were so advanced that the Vreth could not even send a message before they died. 6 months after the first battle, the great Vreth Armada departed their homeworld. 15,000 ships carrying millions of warriors set out to avenge their defeat and consume the defiant species that dared to challenge them. They never reached the core worlds. The humans had prepared the space between Vreth territory and Concordance territory with traps and ambushes. Every system became a battlefield. Every asteroid field hid weapons platforms. Every planet hosted ground forces ready to fight. The Vreth lost 1,000 ships before they even reached the first major defensive line. Admiral Chen coordinated the defense from her flagship, now joined by a fleet that numbered over 8,000 human vessels and another 3,000 from concordant species. She fought with cold precision, never wasting lives, never taking unnecessary risks, always knowing exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The war lasted 5 months. Battle after battle, the Vreth advance slowed, stopped, and then reversed. Their supply lines were cut. Their reinforcements were destroyed. Their morale shattered as they faced an enemy that could not be frightened, could not be intimidated, and would not stop fighting. When it was over, the Great Vreth Armada had been reduced to barely 2,000 ships, fleeing back toward their homeworld in complete chaos. Admiral Chen gathered her commanders and gave the order to pursue. The human fleet entered Vreth space for the first time. They passed through systems that had been conquered centuries ago, worlds stripped of life to feed the crystalline hunger of the Dominion. They saw the ruins of civilizations that had been consumed, the empty shells of planets that had once teemed with life. They reached the Vreth homeworld in 3 weeks. It was a massive planet, its surface covered with towering crystal structures that reached toward the sky. Billions of Vreth lived there, the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years. The remaining Vreth fleet formed a desperate defensive line around their home, knowing that if they failed, their species faced extinction. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance and looked at the world she had come to destroy. Her fleet surrounded it completely. Her weapons could reduce its surface to molten glass in a matter of hours. Every Vreth could be killed. The threat could be ended forever. The Concordance Council had urged exactly that. After what the Vreth had done, after the billions they had killed and the civilizations they had destroyed, total annihilation seemed like justice. Instead, Chen opened a communication channel. "Vreth Dominion," she said. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Colonial Command. Your fleets are destroyed. Your empire is broken. Your homeworld is surrounded. You have no hope of victory." A response came from the planet's surface. A new voice, older than Crick's, filled with anger and fear in equal measure. "What do you want, human? To gloat before you destroy us? To make us beg for mercy we know you will not give?" "I am offering you a choice," Chen said. "The same choice I offered Overseer Crix before your war began. You can surrender. You can disarm. You can submit to oversight and pay reparations for the damage you have caused. And in return, your civilization will survive. Your children will live." Silence on the channel. The Vreth commanders clearly could not believe what they were hearing. "You would spare us?" the voice said finally. "After everything we have done? After all the species we have consumed? You would let us live?" "Yes." "Why?" Chen looked out at the crystal towers of the Vreth homeworld. She thought about all the species they had destroyed, all the lives they had taken. She thought about the easy path, the path of vengeance and annihilation, and she chose differently. "Because we remember what it is like to almost lose everything," she said. "Because vengeance is easy and mercy is hard. And because the measure of strength is not what you can destroy, it is what you choose to spare." She turned to Admiral Sorvex, who stood beside her. The Thalani officer's eyes were wet with emotion. "You truly mean this," Sorvex said softly. "After everything they did to us, you would let them live." "We did not fight this war to commit genocide," Chen replied. "We fought it to survive, to protect those who could not protect themselves, and to prove that there is a better way than endless cycles of conquest and revenge." The Vreth accepted the terms. They had no choice. Their fleets were gone, their empire shattered, their population at the mercy of an enemy who had proven itself more powerful than anything they had ever faced. They expected to be destroyed anyway, once they disarmed. Every other species they had conquered would have done exactly that, but the humans kept their word. In the years that followed, the Vreth were watched but not oppressed. Their weapons were taken, but their civilization was allowed to continue. Human administrators oversaw the transition from empire to peaceful society. It was difficult. There were rebellions and setbacks, but humanity had patience, and the Concordance had learned to trust human judgment. 30 years after the war ended, a new generation of Vreth came of age. These were children who had never known conquest, never tasted the flesh of other species, never believed that strength meant domination. They learned about the old ways from history books, and they learned about the new ways from the diverse societies that now traded freely across the galaxy. Admiral Chen Wei retired to Earth, where she lived quietly until her death at the age of 93. She was buried with full military honors, and representatives from over 40 species attended her funeral. The Vreth ambassador laid a crystal flower on her grave and wept. Admiral Sorvex wrote a history of the war that became required reading at every military academy in the Concordance. Its final chapter was titled The Human Way. On a rebuilt world at the edge of what had been the Vreth Dominion, a school held classes in a building made of both metal and crystal. Human children and Vreth children sat together, learning mathematics and science and history. During recess, they played games that mixed traditions from both species. A human teacher watched them from the window of her classroom. She was old enough to remember the war, old enough to remember the fear and the hatred. But when she looked at those children playing together, she saw something else. She saw the future. The war had ended not with destruction, but with choice. Not with vengeance, but with mercy. And that choice had changed everything. Humanity had come to the galaxy as outsiders, young and seemingly weak. They had revealed themselves as warriors without equal, capable of destruction on a scale that terrified even the Vreth. But in the end, their greatest victory was not the battles they won. It was the peace they chose to build instead. The teacher smiled and returned to her lesson. Outside, the children laughed in the sunlight, human and Vreth together, the war of memory fading into history where it belonged. This was the human way. This was how empires ended and friendships began.